shadow resolved itself with a sickening lurch in my gut. Slumped against the far wall, head bowed, limbs askew like a discarded marionette, was Jake. My relief at finding him alive was a fleeting, fragile thing, immediately crushed by the way he sat, the utter vacancy in his posture. The beam of my failing flashlight quivered in my hand, casting dancing, distorted shadows that made the small chamber pulsate with unease. I moved closer, cautiously, every instinct on high alert. Jake? The name was a silent scream in my mind, unvoiced. His head lolled up slowly. His eyes, when they met mine, were abysses, unfocused, reflecting no recognition, only a dull, terrifying emptiness. His face was smudged with dirt and something darker near his temple, a bruise blooming purple against pale skin from the fall, no doubt. But the physical injuries seemed superficial compared to the damage clearly wrought within. Then he began to mumble. Not words, not language, but a soft, continuous stream of disjointed syllables, a river of babble flowing from some broken place deep inside him. It was a chilling sound, intimate and alien. My throat tightened. This wasn't shock, not just disorientation. This was something else, something insidious that had taken root. And then, a sound that froze the marrow in my bones. Interspersed with the senseless murmuring, a sharp, high-pitched giggle erupted from him. It was identical, unmistakably so, to the clown laughter that had tormented me in the mirror maze. My blood ran cold. Was he the source? Had he been the source all along, his fractured mind somehow projecting that horror into the reflective prison? Or had the maze infected him, broken him and rebuilt him into this giggling, vacant shell? The implications were horrifying either way. My fear of the immediate surroundings, the unknown chamber, receded, replaced by a far more profound and personal dread. This wasn't some external monster to be fought or fled. This was Jake, my partner, unraveling before my eyes. I reached out, my hand trembling slightly, and touched his arm. His skin was cool, clammy. He didn't flinch, didn't react, his unfocused gaze drifting past me as if I were another shadow on the wall. The stream of nonsensical syllables continued, punctuated by another of those awful, out-of-place giggles. This vacant stare, a universe away from the Jake who'd once nervously hot-wired a security system in that crumbling Zurich vault, cracking terrible puns under his breath even as his hands shook. Back then, his humor, however grating, was a shield, a defense mechanism against the fear we both felt, but processed so differently. I relied on his technical acumen, his ability to see solutions where I saw only obstacles. He, in turn, perhaps relied on my focus, my refusal to break, to keep us moving forward no matter how grim the situation. We were an unlikely pair, my intense, often grim determination contrasting sharply with his jittery energy and relentless attempts at levity. Yet, it had worked. Through forgotten temples, haunted estates, and shadowy corporate facilities, our discordant partnership had somehow seen us through. Now, that shield was not just down, it was shattered, the humor twisted into this grotesque, mocking echo. I had to get us out of this constructed nightmare, away from the mirrors and whatever lingering influence they held. The room we were in, with its rougher walls, felt like a transition point. I gently took Jake's arm, trying to pull him to his feet. He was a dead weight at first, then rose with a slow, puppet-like compliance, his limbs moving with a disturbing lack of volition. His mumbling didn't cease, nor did the occasional, chilling giggle. The exit from this particular chamber wasn't immediately obvious, but the beam of my flashlight, though weakening, caught a less uniform section of wall, perhaps where I had broken through earlier from the other side, or another, less obvious passage. I guided Jake towards it. It led back into a narrow corridor, thankfully not entirely lined with intact mirrors, many panels already shattered from my earlier rampage. The floor crunched with broken glass. The air still hummed with a faint, residual wrongness. But my immediate focus was on Jake, his stumbling gait, the vacant look in his eyes. The labyrinthine quality of the maze seemed less potent now, its psychological power blunted by the more pressing horror of Jake's condition. Or perhaps I was just too numb, too focused on my deteriorating partner, to fully register its disorienting geometry. We pushed through a final jagged opening in what might have been a service tunnel behind the maze proper, and the environment changed dramatically. The air grew heavy, damp, carrying the distinct earthy scent of ancient stone and subterranean water. The sounds of the constructed hell faded, replaced by a profound silence broken only by the slow, rhythmic plink. Plink. Plink of water dripping somewhere in the vast darkness ahead. We had emerged from the artificial maze into a natural cave system. The scale of it was immense. My flashlight beam, now a pathetic sliver of light, barely penetrated the oppressive blackness, hinting at a colossal chamber whose ceiling and far walls remained lost in shadow. A faint, cool draft wafted from deeper within, carrying with it the promise of endless, unexplored depths. For a moment, a sliver of hope. Nature, however forbidding, felt less actively malevolent than the man-made horrors we'd just escaped. But this new environment presented its own daunting challenges. The unknown, the darkness, the sheer crushing scale of it. Exhaustion gnawed at me, a deep bone weariness that made every step an effort. Jake was a heavy weight on my arm, his feet shuffling, his head bowed. He needed rest. I needed rest. My hope was that sleep, proper sleep, might clear some of the fog from his mind, might bring back some semblance of the man I knew. We stumbled through the echoing darkness, my flashlight beam sweeping back and forth, searching for a defensible alcove, a place where we could be relatively sheltered. The cave floor was uneven, littered with loose rocks and slick patches of moisture. After what felt like an age of careful navigation, I found a slightly recessed area, a shallow depression in the cave wall, offering a modicum of protection from at least one direction. I eased Jake down, propping him against the cold stone. He slumped immediately, his eyes closing, though the soft, senseless murmuring continued, a ghostly whisper in the vast silence. Another of those sharp, out-of-place giggles escaped his lips, echoing slightly in the stillness. It grated on my already frayed nerves. I sank down beside him, every muscle protesting. My gaze lingered on his face, illuminated by the dying flashlight beam. This wasn't the first time I'd seen Jake terrified. I remembered the incident in the catacombs beneath Odessa. We'd been separated, and when I found him, he was backed into a corner, pale and shaking, convinced he'd seen something moving in the ossuary. But even then, amidst his terror, there had been a spark of awareness, a flicker of his usual self. This was different. This was a hollowing out, a terrifying vacancy. I thought of his family, a sister he mentioned once, nephews he doted on. He kept their pictures in his wallet, showed them to me once during a particularly tedious stakeout, a rare moment of personal vulnerability. The Jake who cherished those photos seemed a ghost now, replaced by this broken effigy. The fear of losing him, not just as a partner but as a person, was a cold knot in my stomach. My responsibility for him felt immense, a crushing weight in this suffocating darkness. I decided I would take the first watch, though what I was watching for in this impenetrable gloom, I didn't know. The flashlight was set on its lowest setting, casting a feeble, circular pool of light around us. I leaned my head back against the cold rock, trying to conserve energy, my senses straining against the profound silence of the cave. The rhythmic dripping of water was the only sound, a monotonous counterpoint to Jake's quiet, disturbing vocalizations. Slowly, despite my resolve, the exhaustion began to win. My eyelids grew heavy, heavier. I was jolted awake by a sound that was utterly alien to the cave's quietude. Click, click, clack, skitter click, sharp chitinous sounds like dozens of tiny, hard-shelled things skittering across rock. My eyes snapped open. The sounds were all around us. Close, coming from the impenetrable darkness just beyond our meager circle of light. My heart leaped into my throat. Panic, cold and immediate, surged through me. Instinctively, I reached for the flashlight to brighten the beam, to see what was out there. As my fingers fumbled with the switch, the already weak light sputtered, flickered violently, and died. Plunged into absolute suffocating pitch blackness. The battery, drained by our long passage through the maze and my careless watch, had finally given out. The clicking intensified. Click, skitter, clack, click. It was closer now from multiple directions. I imagined small, unseen creatures, perhaps cave insects or something worse, drawn by our warmth, our presence. The darkness was a canvas for my worst fears. The fear of camping, of being exposed and vulnerable in an uncontrolled, hostile environment, surged with a primal intensity. There was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, no way to even see the threat. Desperate, I did the only thing I could. I cupped my hands around my mouth and yelled, a raw, guttural sound of defiance and fear, hoping to startle whatever was out there. I clapped my hands sharply, slapped the rock wall beside me. Anything to break the silence, to assert our presence, to perhaps scare away these unseen denizens of the dark. My sudden burst of noise seemed to rouse Jake. He shifted beside me, making a low, groaning sound, a single, almost coherent syllable escaping him. No. And just like that, the clicking stopped. Abruptly. Instantly. The silence that slammed back in was even more profound, more terrifying than the sounds it replaced. My shouts echoed faintly, then died, leaving only the distant, mocking plink. Plink. Plink of dripping water. My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. The timing was too precise. The creatures, whatever they were, had vanished the moment Jake made a sound, the moment he stirred from his deeper delirium into a more conscious state, however briefly. The clown laughter in the maze, seemingly tied to him, and now this. A chilling hypothesis began to form, unwelcome and terrifying. Could Jake be some sort of conduit? His fractured mental state, his fear, somehow attracting these phenomena? Or more disturbingly, was he manifesting them? Was his broken psyche painting these horrors onto the fabric of reality around us? The thought that my partner, my friend, might be the unwilling epicenter of these terrors was a new, deeply unsettling layer of dread. I looked towards where he lay, though I could see nothing, and a shiver traced its way down my spine that had nothing to do with the cave's chill. Sleep was now an impossibility. The darkness was too complete, the silence too pregnant with unseen threats. We had to move. I reached out, fumbling in the blackness until my hand found Jake's arm. He was still, his breathing shallow. I shook him gently, then more firmly. He grunted, resisting for a moment, then allowed me to pull him to his feet. Guiding him in total darkness was a new level of challenge. I kept one hand on the cave wall, feeling its rough, damp texture, trying to discern its contours, its direction. My other hand held Jake's arm, pulling him along. He was mostly pliant, a dead weight, stumbling frequently. His only contributions to our progress were the occasional soft mumbles, a sudden out-of-place giggle that sounded monstrous in the echoing blackness, or the drag of his feet. The cave system seemed to stretch on endlessly. Turn after turn, passage after narrow passage, opening into larger chambers only to constrict again. Every so often, my hand would sweep across an opening, a side tunnel, a blacker patch of blackness. Which way to go? There were no landmarks, no guiding stars, not even the faintest glimmer of light to offer a bearing. The dripping water was our only constant companion, its monotonous rhythm a maddening soundtrack to our desperate blind shuffle. The fear of walking in circles became a palpable presence, a cold dread that settled in my stomach. Were we making any progress at all, or merely tracing the same lightless loop, a journey into deepening futility? I tried to recall techniques for navigating in darkness, counting steps, feeling for changes in air currents, but my exhaustion was a thick fog in my brain, blunting my investigator's instincts, reducing me to a creature of primal fear and fading hope. I remembered reading about cavers who, lost in the dark for days, would eventually succumb to disorientation, their minds playing tricks on them until they could no longer distinguish reality from hallucination. Was that to be our fate? Trapped in this subterranean labyrinth, our sanity slowly unraveling with each fruitless step? This was a different kind of exposure than the forest above, but no less terrifying. The raw vulnerability of being stripped of sight, of control, at the mercy of an indifferent, lightless world. Hours must have passed, measured only by the growing ache in my legs, the increasing weight of Jake's unresponsive form, and the soul-crushing monotony of the darkness. My throat was parched, my stomach hollow. The sheer physical and mental exertion was taking its toll. I stumbled, catching myself against the wall, my head swimming. I had to rest, if only for a few minutes. Pushing onward in this state was asking for disaster. I felt around, identifying a slightly recessed alcove, similar to our previous resting spot. I guided Jake into it, helping him sit. He slumped immediately, his head falling forward. The mumbling had all but ceased, replaced by shallow, irregular breaths. I sank down beside him, the rough stone cold against my back. My eyelids felt like lead weights. The urge to simply surrender to the darkness, to let oblivion take me, was a seductive whisper. Jake, I thought, the name a silent plea. I reached out, found his shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze, a gesture meant to convey 1,000 things. Stay awake. Keep watch. We're in this together. But as I touched him, felt the slackness of his muscle, the slight tremor that ran through him, a profound wave of doubt washed over me. Was this even Jake anymore? The person I was guiding, the one I was relying on, however tenuously. Was it the partner I'd faced countless dangers head-on with? Or was it merely a shell, animated by the creeping tendrils of madness that had taken root in this cursed place? Could I trust him with anything? Even the simple act of remaining still while I tried to gather my strength? The thought of closing my eyes, of surrendering my vigilance with this shell of the man I knew beside me, was terrifying. Yet I had no choice. My body was screaming for respite. I leaned my head back, took a deep, ragged breath, and let my eyes close. The blackness behind my eyelids was indistinguishable from the cave's own. For a blissful second, there was only the sensation of letting go. The sound ripped through the darkness, through my exhausted mind, with the force of a physical blow. My eyes snapped open. It wasn't Jake's intermittent, broken giggles. This was the full-throated, maniacal, terrifyingly familiar clown laughter from the depths of the mirror maze. loud, close, and filled with a predatory glee. I scrambled upright, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I reached out for Jake, my hand sweeping through empty space. He was gone, vanished into the pitch blackness. Terror, pure and unadulterated, flooded my system. Had he wandered off in his delirium? Or had he been taken? Was he a lure, willingly or unwillingly? Or did the original source of that laughter, the entity from the maze, track us down and is now here with us in these cursed caves? The laughter echoed again, seemingly from my left, further down the passage we had been following. Without a thought, driven by pure, adrenalized instinct, I lurched to my right, into an unexplored branching tunnel, away from that horrifying sound. My hands scraped against the rough cave walls, guiding me blindly, desperately. I stumbled, caught myself, pushed onward, deeper into the unknown blackness. Behind me, I heard what was not just the laughter now, but light, almost jaunty, skipping footsteps. Unmistakably, the clown. It was following me. The absurdity of it, the sheer nightmarish quality. A skipping clown in the lightless depths of a cave system beneath Chernobyl would have been laughable in any other context. Here, it was the purest distillation of terror. The laughter swirled around me, seeming to bounce off unseen walls, coming from all directions at once. And then, woven into it, or perhaps spoken directly by that chilling, playful voice, I began to hear words. Or at least my stressed, terrified mind interpreted the sounds as words. "Running away, Jaxon. He. Nowhere to hide down here." The voice was high-pitched, gleeful, filled with a sickening amusement. "Lost in the dark, are we? Just like your friend, Jakey. Hoo. He told me such funny jokes before he wandered off." My breath hitched. Jakey, it knew his name. He liked my games. You will too. Everyone loves a good game of hide and seek. My panting was harsh, ragged in the silence between its taunts. The skipping footsteps kept pace, never too close, never too far. A relentless, playful pursuit. "Getting tired, Jaxon? I can hear you puffing. Don't worry, it'll all be over soon. You're going to die down here, all alone." Each word was a fresh spike of terror, a psychological barb designed to break me. It mimicked my stumbling sounds, exaggerated my gasps for air. It was inside my head, amplifying my deepest fears. I pushed on, descending deeper, the slope of the cave floor distinctly angling downwards. The air grew colder, damper. My lungs burned. My legs were trembling, threatening to give out. Then, a cold, surprisingly strong grip seized my right shoulder from behind, followed by a voice whispering, "Tag, you're it." A strangled cry ripped from my throat. Pure, unthinking animal panic took over. I spun, lashing out wildly with my arms into the blackness, connecting with nothing, and then I bolted. Blindly, recklessly, with the last desperate surge of adrenaline-fueled strength I possessed. My forehead connected with something unyieldingly solid, a cave wall, with a sickening, resonant thud. A supernova of white-hot pain exploded behind my eyes. My legs buckled. The world, already an abyss of blackness, began to spin, to tilt, to recede. The mocking laughter seemed to grow distant, swirling around me as I fell. The pitch blackness of the cave deepened, thickened, became an impossible, crushing weight, pulling me down into an even more profound, sightless void.